Hello everyone, I am Vijay and today we are going to build this website which is random quotes generator using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. It is kind of a mini project where we will be focusing on JavaScript mainly. We will not be wasting time on writing the CSS and HTML part. We will just be focused on to the logic, like how the data is being fetched. Like this is a pretty simple website which does, like, it generates random quotes and their author name, and if we click on this generate button then it generates one more random quote, and if we click on the refresh button then also it does the same job. This is not a project which you can showcase onto your resume because it does a very basic job. This is just for your practice purpose. I will recommend this project to beginners, like if you are in your first year of your college or in the second year maybe. So you can definitely check this out, and let us move on to the overview of this part. Like, let me quickly give you an overview of this project. So this is the overview and flow of the project. So there is a generate button that is there. If we click on the button, it makes a request to the API. Now what is an API? API is just an interface between the website and the server, like the client. In our case, we can say the client or the website is the same thing. So it acts as an interface between the client and the server. Like it enables us to use some functionality of server which server is providing us, or you can say it is a part of server which, like, server is giving us some features or the functionality, and through API we can use all those functionalities. So that is there, and by clicking on the generate button it makes a request to the API, and as soon as the server receives the request it generates the response. Like in this case it generates a random quote, and that response we receive into our JavaScript file, and as soon as we receive the response there we can dynamically we can extract the data from there. Like we can extract the quote and we can extract the author name, and we can put both the details into our HTML. Like we can dynamically change the content of HTML from the data which we have received from the server response. All these things we have to do using the JavaScript fetch API. So what are the prerequisites to do this project? Now, nothing much is there, like basic knowledge of JavaScript, basic DOM manipulation and the fetch API. If you do not know or have very little knowledge about these, then don't worry, I will walk you through the code, and I hope it will make sense by the end of this video. Let us move on to the coding part. So for this I've made an empty folder, that is projects. Let us create a new folder here. Let us name it random quotes generator. Random quotes generator. Let us open this folder, and for this project I will be using VS Code. So let us open that. Open with code. You can also use file menu to open any folder. Like if that option doesn't show up in your PC, then you can always come here into the file menu and you can choose the open folder option from here, and you can open the same folder by this way. So let us create the files, that is index.html. Then it is better to maintain a folder structure like assets and all those things, but this is a very simple website, so I will not be like using any folder. Let us directly create the files, that is styles.css, and for JavaScript I will be creating script.js file. So these three files are there. So let us quickly write our HTML file. So if you want some suggestion, like if I type in an exclamation mark, it is showing some suggestions. So it is just an autocomplete feature. Like if I press enter, it will give me the boilerplate code for HTML. Let us change the title, random quotes generator. And by the way, if you want to receive these suggestions, then you can always install some extensions. Like for HTML and CSS there is an extension, HTML CSS support. You can install this extension and you can get all those suggestions when you type in the code. So let us get back to our HTML file. In the body part we have to display, like, the first of all you have to display the quote, then the author name, then we have a button. So let us create those three elements. So first of all, quote. For quote I will be using h2 and I will be giving it a class name of quote. By the way, there is a shortcut, like if I want to create a paragraph with the class name of author, like p dot author, it will create a paragraph with class name of author. And then I want to create a button with a class name of btn dot button dot. So I will be writing button dot btn. So it has created a button by the name of btn. So let us give some content to the button, like it will be a generate button. So like it should show the generate text inside the button. And let us create some quote, like just type in lorem, it will give you the suggestion. Like these are some meaningless stuff to fill the content. And inside the paragraph, let us write in hello, and let us see how this website looks. I've installed one extension, that is a live server. So let me show you the live server. So this is the live server extension by Ritvik. It creates a local development server with live reload feature. So what does it mean? Like whenever we do some changes into our code, and if we save the files, it will automatically reload into our browser. Otherwise we have to do it manually, like we have to save all the files and then we have to go to the browser, and there we have to like click onto the refresh button, or you can press Ctrl R, then it will refresh. But using this extension, so it will be very much helpful for us. So let us get back to our HTML file. If you have installed this live server extension, then you will get this go live button here. So you can use this go live button to run the local development server. So let us click on to this go live button and see how our website looks. So right now our website looks something like this. So there is an h2 to display the quote, and this is the author name, and this is the generate button. So all these things, like this content will be like injected dynamically through JavaScript. So for demo purpose, I just gave these content. So let me remove this content, and because these content will be dynamically fetched from the API and then will be injected into this. So that's all. Let us move on to our JavaScript main logic. First of all, I'll be selecting all these three elements. So you can use any, like I'll be using DOM selector methods. Like first of all, let me create some variables. Let quote is equals to document dot. There are many selector functions, like get element by tag name, class name, by ID, all those things are there. But the method which I use is query selector method, because it is applicable for all. You can specify here the class name, tag name, or ID. It basically fetches everything. So I'll be specifying here the class name, which is dot quote. As you can see here in our index.html file, we have mentioned here the class name as quote. That's why I'm using dot here, because it's a class name. And if there is an ID, you have to use the hashtag. So let us create the author name here. So I'll be using this shortcut. So let us create the author. There is an extra queue here. Let us remove this. So this is we have selected here author using the author class, and then we have to select this button by the same way. So let us do that. Let btn is equals to document dot query selector and then dot btn. So we have selected all these three elements. Now let us look at the logic to fetch data from the API. So let us look at the documentation of fetch. Just you can type in here the fetch API docs. Like you can go through any documentation. Let us go through this MDN web docs one. So this is the fetch API documentation. They have provided each and every information about how to use fetch API. So let us visit this section, that is using the fetch API. So this is a basic fetch request, like they have implemented a basic fetch request. So let us zoom in a little bit. This is a fetch function. It takes the API endpoint, and in return it returns a response, and this response contains .json method, and it returns the actual data. So it is a two-step process. Like first of all, you are getting the response from the fetch, and from that response you get the actual data, and then you can do whatever you want to do with the data. Like they are console logging the movies, but you can, like in our case, we like as soon as we get the data from the API, we can set that data into our HTML. So one thing to notice is that they are using this await, async await keyword, because fetch is a time taking process, so we have to wait till it generates a response. If we do not use await keyword here, then your response will be empty, and in the next line when you try to access the response.json, you will get error here because the response was already empty and you do not have anything in the response, and .json method will not be there. So we must use await here, async await here, so that our response is generated always and we get the proper data from the API. There is one more way of handling this fetch method, like it basically returns a promise. So to handle promise, there are two ways. First is to use this async await, and another one is to use the then method. Like there are then method, then catch method, and finally method. So you can use that way also, but in this project we will stick to this simple way of handling promise, that is the async await method. And this is a basic way of handling fetch request. So this is a basic way of implementing fetch API, but there is an advanced way where you can get better control. So let me show you that. So this is the way of you are using your fetch API, where you can get more control. Like you can edit the method which you are using, like generally it is the get method, but you can use these methods like post, put, delete, patch, all those methods, and there are more options. You can go through it, like we can specify here, or if you have any API key, authentication, you can specify all these things here, and you can specify the main body here, like whatever data you want to pass, and at the end you can generate or return the response.json. And at the end they have used this .then method of handling the promise, because basically it is returning the response.json is a promise only. Therefore they have used here .then, and inside this callback function they have handled the data here. So this is advanced way of using like with the full options available. So you can check this out. Like in our future projects we will be using these type of fetch requests, and there we will be using some more libraries. Like there is a library available named Axios. We will be using that for doing all the fetch operations. So for this project we will stick to this only, the basic fetch request. And by the way, this is the API endpoint through which it is fetching the data. So let us look at the API. So let me type in some random quotes API. We will figure out the API endpoint, but there is one thing that we can use our own API. Like we want to create our custom API, we can create that by using the backend technologies like Node, Express, or you can use Django. There are many technologies by which you can create your own API, but for this project we will be using an API which is already available on the internet. So let us quickly go through some APIs. There are some APIs like by API Ninjas, Rapid API, but in all these APIs you have to create an account and you have to get the API key, and through that key you can use that key into your project so that they identify you like through that API key. But for now I will be using this API. It requires no authentication, so I will be using that. So this is the repository of the free API that I was talking about. Let us go through the README section. So they are telling that this is the URL for the API, I mean the API endpoint, that is api.quotable.io. This is the endpoint, and they are also telling that there is a rate limit of 180 requests per minute per IP. So you will be getting, like in a minute you can at max generate 180 random codes. That is okay. And this is the API reference, like to get random code. These are the features which the server is providing us, that is get random quote, get random quotes, then all these features are there. Like for this project we will be using this get random quote. So to do so we have to provide the route as /random. So after the API endpoint we have to provide the path as /random. Therefore let us do that. Let us copy this we have pasted it here, and if I do /random here, we got the response that is in the form of object. If I do pretty print here, you can see this is the response which we got. It is pretty much zoomed in, so let me zoom in a little bit. You can see here, this is the content part, this is the actual code, and this is the author. Like, these are in the key value pair. As it is an object, it is in the key value pair, so key is the author and this is the value, which is the author name. These are some tags, and this is the length, date added, date modified. But from this object we need these two data, that is the content and the author. We will extract these two information and we will put this information into our HTML. So let us see the get random quote, what they are telling. So they are also telling here that this method is deprecated in favor of get random quotes. So let us see what get random quotes does. So they are also specifying this path, that is /quote/random. So by default it generates one quote. So get one or more random quotes from the database. So if we scroll down a little bit, you can see here, like if we do /quote/random, then we get one quote. But if we do /quote/random and we specify the limit is equals to 3 by query, we can get 3 quotes. So that's why they are telling us to use these path or these endpoints, because these can pretty much do the job of that single one, because the first one is doing, it is basically generating one quote, and the second one is capable of doing everything, like it can generate 1 quote, 10 quote. Therefore we'll be going with the second one. So let us try this one, that is get this thing. So let us do that. Okay, we have to use here quotes/random, then we have to query here, that is limit is equals to 5. We specify here, we get 5 quotes. So let me pretty print here. So you can see here we got 5 quotes, but one thing here to notice is that this time it is in the form of array. Like when the limit is 1 also, then also it is in the form of array. Previously it was in the form of object, but you can see here it is in the form of array. So we have to handle that also. In the array there are objects, like for this it is having only one object, but if we have a limit of 5, it has 5 objects, so we have to handle that. So this is how it works. So we'll stick on to this URL, that is api.quotable.io/quotes/random, and it generates an array which contains one object, and through this object we have to extract this information, the content and the author. So let us copy this URL from here, and then let us get back to our JavaScript. Let us paste it here. Let me comment it for now. So let us do one thing. Let us create a function. It will be an asynchronous function, async function, and let me name it as display quote, and then we have to do the fetch API thing. So let us do this fetch API thing. Like we have to use this, like we have to implement this. So let us do that. Let response is equals to await fetch, and here we have to specify our endpoint, API endpoint, that is this thing which we have already pasted here. So let us cut it from here and we have to paste it here within quotations. Let us do that. So this is the API endpoint, which is the api.quotable.io and quotes/random. So it generates a response, and through this response we get the data. So let data is equals to again we have to use await, and we have to do response.json because they have mentioned here first step is to generate the response, next step is to use this response.json method to get the actual data. So let us do that. Await response.json and we get the actual data. Let us console log the data and see what all things we are getting here. So console log data, let us see if it is working or not. Oh, one thing is there, we haven't linked our CSS file and the JavaScript file into our HTML file. So let us do that. First of all, I will be linking my CSS file into our HTML. So in the href part, we have to specify the path to the CSS file, that is /styles.css, and just before closing the body tag, we have to put the script, that is script, and in the source we have to give /script.js. like if it is in the folder, you have to specify the entire folder path. So that's all. We have linked our style sheet, and then we have linked our JavaScript part. So let us see if we are getting, like you can press F12 or you can also use this inspect button or inspect option from the Chrome to get this menu. You can see here we are getting this elements, console, sources. So in the console we will be getting the output. So nothing we got because we haven't called our function. So let us call the function. So this is the display code function. Let me call this function. So whenever this website loads, this function will be called. So yeah, we got something. So you can see here we got an array which contains one object, that is the author, then the content, all those things which we saw in the response of the API. As it is an array, it works on indexing, so it is having only one object. So to get that object we have to use index 0. So let us extract that thing. So if we do like let what we can say here, we can specify a variable. So quote data is equals to data of 0. So data is in the form of array which is having only one object, and to get that object we are targeting it with the help of the 0th index, because array works with index, and always in arrays the indexing always starts with 0. So we are using the 0th index, and through that we get the quote data. So let us display the quote data, and now let us see what we are getting. So we are getting the proper object which is quote, and in this object we are getting all these data which is author and the content and all those data. So now as we have successfully passed the data, so let us target only the quote and the author part. To get the quote and the author, you can specify you can target those things using the dot operator. Like this is an object quote data, so if we write in dot author, we can get the author name. Like if we see here, see we are getting only the author name because this is how objects work. Like this is the object name, and if you want to use some property of that object, you can use the dot operator. Like it was having all those data, but we have specified we want like one specific data, that is author, and in the similar way if we write quote data dot content, we can get the quote, because in the object, if I console log the object one more time, quote data, you can see there that the quote was in form of the content, which is this. See, the content part is our quote and the author part is the author. So dot author we get the author name, and dot content we get the quote. So that's all about this. Let us dynamically inject these two things in our HTML. How to do? Using these selectors. So one more thing which I want to change, because it is displaying the single quote, let me change this variable to quote, just quote, not s. So let us do that. Quote dot, there is a property which is inner text, inner HTML, and there is one more property that is text content. They both do the same job. Like the text content just injects or changes the text content of the element, and the inner HTML, like it allows us to inject HTML into the content. Like if I want to insert a paragraph into h1, like, or there is some div and I want to insert some more div or some h1 into that div, we can use the inner HTML property. But for this project we just need to change the content of the element, therefore we will be using the text content property. We want to change the text content to be this quote data dot content, because this is what is containing the quote. So let us copy this and paste it here. So let me once again explain you this line, that is quote dot text content is equals to quote data dot content. What does it mean? First of all, this quote data dot content, it means the actual quote that we are getting from the fetch. So this means the quote which I am getting from the fetch API. So this is clear. And this quote dot text content, what does it mean? This quote is the h2 which we have targeted through the DOM selectors. So this quote is having access of this h2, and there is a property dot text content. So if we assign the actual quote to the text content, then it means that we are dynamically injecting the quote to the text content of our h2. I hope this makes sense. Like if I remove this and if I write in hello here, then you can see that I am writing quote dot text content is equals to hello, means quote dot text content equals to hello means, like the quote which you have selected, that is h2, its text content should be hello. So if I see in the browser, we can see here it is dynamically getting that hello from the JavaScript. In the same way, if I write the quote dot text content should be this thing, the quote which we received from the API. If I write this, then you can see here in the browser we are getting this quote which is dynamically injected from JavaScript to HTML. And in the similar way, I can do author dot text content to be quote data dot author. By this way, we are changing the text content of author, that is in the form of paragraph here. We are changing its content to be the author which we received from the API, that is this quote data dot author. So these two things we have dynamically pushed from JavaScript to HTML. So we do not need all these console log statements. Yeah, that's all. Like if we see, then we can see here this is the quote which is being displayed and the author name. And if we refresh, then the function is again called and we get one more quote and the author name. So that's all about the JavaScript. But there is one more thing which we haven't implemented, that is this generate button. This is doing nothing. Like if we click on generate, nothing is happening, and it is just working on the refresh button. Like whenever we do the refresh, the function is getting called and the quote is getting generated. So let us add the functionality to the button. So we have selected button here. So let us add an event listener to the button. So btn, that is what we have selected here, btn dot add event listener. There is a method add event listener. We are listening for click, so we will specify here the event as click, and on click what we have to do, we have to specify here a function which will be called whenever this event happens. So whenever this click happens, this function which we will be specifying will be called upon that click. So on click we need to call this display quote. So let us call that display quote. By the way, you don't have to specify the parentheses here, because if we specify parentheses, then it means that this will be called as soon as this JavaScript loads up, but we don't want that. We need to pass only the function name so that it calls this function whenever the click happens. We do not want this function to run once, but we want to run this function again and again whenever this click happens. So make sure you only pass the function name here, and that's all. We have implemented the event listener to the button. So let us check now if it is working or not. So if we click on generate, then you can see here one more quote is being generated. If I click again, yes, it is working fine. Let me zoom in a little bit. Yes, it is working fine. You can see here there is a slight delay, like I have already mentioned that fetch takes some time to fetch data from the API, so there is a delay. So it is a good practice to use spinners in your website. Like the user will, if the user has a poor internet connection, then he will think like the website has been crashed or something like that, which is not a good practice. So we'll be using this the loading effect. Like we will not be using actual spinner here, but we will use a small trick here, that is just when the function is getting called, then we change the button content to be button.text content to be loading, and whenever the fetching thing completes and the injection thing completes, like we have successfully injected our HTML and we have changed the content, the fetching thing, everything is done till by the end of this function, then we can revert back the button.text content to be generate. Like you will get to know what I am telling. Generate. So now as you can see here, whenever we click on generate, it will call this function. As soon as this function is called, first of all it changes the text content of button to be loading. It shows user that, oh, something is happening at the back, so let me wait till it loads, and then it does all this response stuff and it changes the HTML and it injects the content, and at the end when all these things are complete, then but the text content of the button goes back to generate. It shows that again, okay, you can generate one more quote, the quote or the fetching thing is completely done. So by this way you can implement the loading part, but it is not a very good practice. You can use your custom loading effect. Like I have changed the button content, but you can always use here, like there are spinners available, you can use spinners here, but this is a very basic implementation of loading. Like if I click on generate, you can see it shows us loading for some time, then after the quote has been displayed, the loading goes off. Like one more time, if we can see here, one more time, let us see. So yes, this works perfect. So now only styling part is left. Okay, one more part is left that we should always do, that is to handle the error part. So as we are using fetch here, so there might be errors from the server side, like it could not give us a response, or you have used the, like they were specifying about the rate limit, like in 1 minute you can only generate 180 quotes. Like if you exceed the rate, then it will give us some error. So to handle that error, we can use the try catch block. Like we can use this try catch, like we can cut paste this whole code into try, and we can catch the error in this error block, and we can just alert an error here. We can use alert function and we can specify the error, that is error dot message, message. So by this we can implement the error part. This function will try to run this entire block, and if it gets any error in this block, then it catches that error in this block, like in the catch block, and then an alert message is shown to the user. Let me intentionally do some errors. Like if I modify this API endpoint, let me add one space here. By this the link is damaged, so it should throw the error, like when this function try to run this block, this fetch will throw an error because this is not a valid URL, and it catches the error here and it shows an alert message. Therefore in the browser we get this alert message that is failed to fetch. If you press OK, then it shows failed to fetch, that is okay. So by this, user can get a message like failed to fetch. It's great. And if it is okay, then let me correct the URL, and when the URL is okay, then you get the proper response. And if anything goes wrong, then you can get an alert message like specifying what has gone wrong. Like there we have specified about the error.message alert. You can also use console log here, or you can use one more element here to handle the error. It shows the error in the, like, it can show error in the screen only. Like if I place here one element for error, like if I place a paragraph here like P, and I can give it a class name of error. If I just err will work. And if I select that thing also here, let err is equals to document dot query selector dot err, and without doing this, we can do err dot text content to be error dot message. So previously we were calling the alert method with this error dot message. We were displaying this error into our alert function, but now we are displaying this error into our HTML in the error element, that is the paragraph tag, which is having this class err, like in the same way through which we have dynamically injected this text content through this selectors quote and author and btn. In the same way we are using err also. So let us see if it works. Like if I damage the URL, we can see there it is showing us failed to fetch here only. So that is great. If I go back and fix the URL, it shows nothing because in the error part nothing is there. So that's all. Let me add some CSS to it. It is very basic CSS, like you can try your own CSS. Like I've targeted body dot quote, then dot author, then dot button. I've given them all the styling part. So let us see how this looks. So it looks great. Like if I zoom in and zoom out a little bit, you can see here this is how it looks after giving some styling. You can always give your own style. Let us click on generate. So you can see here it goes on loading, and then it again comes back to generate. So that's all about this video. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, consider subscribing and hitting the like button, and leave any questions or suggestions in the comments below, and stay tuned for more videos like this. And until then, keep learning.